Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm honored to be talking with Dr. Ben Thayil, who's the owner of Lifetime Vision and Eyecare in Miami Gardens, Florida, and also the founder of Lead OD, which serves to help doctors and other business owners build success through leadership development. So, Ben, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to talk with me today. I appreciate it.
Eric, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing for optometrists on the financial side and helping people create harmony.
Yeah, you bet. Tell us a little bit about, your background, how you got into the profession, and how you ended up, the short version maybe of how you ended up owning your own practice, Lifetime Vision.
Sure. So I guess my story starts off kind of classic. I was in second grade. I went to the optometrist and then I ended up with glasses. I was a -4. So, my world is right here pretty much. But it wasn't when I got my glasses that I was like, you know what? I'm going to be an optometrist. It was when I actually went to the office and I met the optometrist. He was just a really nice individual and his office was very calm, which was a lot different than the pediatrician's office I've been to, growing up. And it seemed like his staff and his team really liked working with him. So I was like, you know what? It seems like he's a doctor. He probably makes a good living. And it seems like people really like him. So from second grade, just from that one experience, I kind of had my mindset on becoming an optometrist. So all throughout high school and undergraduate school, I really just focused on studying to become an optometrist. So, which was funny because when I was in undergrad, all of my friends and they all had these undecided majors, and I was like, you guys don't know you didn't decide like in second grade what you wanted to do. But so I realized I was fortunate. I was blessed to be able to kind of stick with that. And I ended up at Nova Southeastern University for optometry school to obtain my doctorate. And then I did my residency in the VA hospital in Salisbury, North Carolina, but I lived in Charlotte because I have nothing against Salisbury, but when you're in your mid 20s, Charlotte is a little bit of a better place to be than living in Salisbury. So, but I finished my residency in primary care and ocular disease. And then I ended up moving back to South Florida and I worked intermittently. I never really signed an employment contract because I wanted to kind of create my own schedule. Freedom was always a big thing for me. I didn't want to be tied to the 7 days a week or a lease or a job where I was locked into, or my time was locked up, I should say. So I 1099 in a bunch of different locations, and I created my own schedule. And then in 2016, I bought I bought a practice. I call it my warm cold start because it was pretty dead when I bought it.
Okay.
And then how it came about that was all the jobs that I've had previous to owning the practice. I I was looking for a place where people like to work, doctors like to practice, and patients like to receive care. And it was really difficult for me to find a place where all three of those things existed. So in actuality, I never thought I was going to own a business or start a practice. I thought I was just going to be an optometrist and just ride off into the sunset. But it came to me one morning where if I really wanted to find that, I had to create it. And that's where the whole journey of business ownership and practice ownership started to come into play.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's a great remark that you just made and a great attitude to have is like going out and creating creating the practice that you want, right? Instead of like just like you said, instead of going out and looking for it, it's like we can choose to create the culture and the atmosphere that you want to have in your own business. Because when you're the owner, you get to make those decisions, and then it just becomes the process of how do we take something. So was there like specific challenges about taking what had already something that had already been built and already had kind of a atmosphere and a culture and converting that into your vision of the practice that you wanted?
Yeah, initially, I mean, looking back, I was just in it, so I couldn't really get my head out of the weeds. So, but looking back, looking at how the team was that I acquired, even working alongside the transitioning doctor that I purchased the practice from, there was actually a lot of friction and tension, and then gaining the trust of the patients as well. A lot of those things just took time. So I took the time. when I first started out, I was writing handwritten letters signed by me, mailing it out to the whole database to try to introduce myself. Just those little touches to try to show that, although the previous doctor was leaving and has sold the practice, that they would still be in good hands. Because at that time, I knew nothing except trying to be a good provider, right? I knew nothing about the business. So my only leverage for gaining trust was to make sure that I continue to be a good provider, and then figuring out the business stuff along the way.
Yeah, okay. What about like with and we're not going to get like details or name names or anything, but like with the staff, because did you inherit his staff then or acquire his staff in the
I did.
purchase?
I
Hmm.
did acquire the staff during the purchase. And then honestly, initially there was some conflict in terms of, who to receive instructions or guidance from or directives from, because there were days where we were both in the practice, and me as the young new owner, I've had all these visions in the direction we want to go to. And then with the transitioning doctor, there's kind of the old ways. This is how we did it. But there was so the staff was conflicted. Do we want to move forward with the new doc, but we want to respect where we came from. So it was really trying to get everyone together and have conversations about what actually happened here, right? What's the goal of everything, and looking from the past to the present and the future, and focusing on what the future looks like and what the team looks like. So that's where I really started getting into, well, what does it really mean to build a good team, or what does it really mean to have good employees? And so I had to really do a lot of self study, in terms of how to keep the group together so that we can be successful together. And also, the big thing is trust, right? So that they can learn to trust me, because instead of looking at them as a liability, as they're just payroll or they're just this, they're really an asset to the practice. And I had to treat them that way.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Okay, so I think over the years, right, I've talked to a lot of people looking to acquire businesses, and whether it's in optometry, even a lot of other industries, and it's like there's always these like those friction points that kind of holds them back, holds some people back from ever taking that step or delaying it massively into their own future. It's like some of these same things we're talking about. It may not have been the ideal practice situation coming in. I mean, I've talked to some people who, have had acquired businesses that were a practice that has had, still had handwritten records and nothing on electronic health records, right? And so there's all these things that are like could be seen as like these major challenges and hurdles, and then how are we going to, transition the patients and the staff? Are they going to stick with me? Am I going to be left, am I going to sign the dotted line and be left with like a small fraction of the patients and no staff because, it just didn't, we didn't handle the transition right. So it kind of sounds like what I hear you saying is you just jumped in to teaching yourself some of those aspects and just got everybody on board, like little trustworthy touch points, and consistently. I mean, sounds like as much as you could to help bridge that transition or help work through that transition. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's correct. So the biggest thing essentially is just learning what you're trying to accomplish, right? My goal was not just to buy a practice and because it was cool to say I'm a practice owner. I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to create, and that was to create a place where people like to receive care, where doctors like to practice, and people like to work. So that having a larger purpose or having that vision allowed me to work through the hardships, be persistent through the friction points, and as long as if you have a bigger goal for yourself, if you have a bigger picture for yourself, you're able to get dragged through the mud a little bit. I mean, it doesn't make it any fun, but it makes it worth it at the end of the day. So instead of just looking at, oh, I got to try to, figure out how to bill and figure out how to get patients in the door. I got to figure out how to, what does, ordering from a lab look like? What is all of that stuff? If I just focused only on that and that was my end point, I would have been done a long time ago, but having the larger picture of what we're trying to create, that is what allows us to work through the friction points.
For sure. Yeah. Is that'll start with the end in mind, right? Which has
Exactly.
been around for a long time. But I think it's great and interesting to hear it, examples of it like you're doing, like actually in practice, because that's an easy thing to say. But like then what are like, okay, so now I've got the end in mind. Like, what is my next step? Right? It's like, how do I start? Because we can't just throw people into that vision. I'm sure at some point along the way you've got some buy-in on that vision from your staff somewhere in there, and you shared it with them early on and probably routinely, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So every Monday we have our weekly kind of big meeting, and we talk about, we always, all of our meetings are surrounded by our mission, vision, and values. So we're always incorporating that on every week. We have, in break rooms and stuff, just little signs, right? The words that are affiliated with our mission, vision, and values. So there's
Mm.
these constant reminders of why we do things. And we have a saying in our practice, like, our goal is a well taken care of patient. So, which helps in our decision making. So it gives our team and the freedom to say, if what I'm about to do for the patient, does that lead to our goal of a well taken care of patient? So that could be anywhere from an extra communication to, let's give this person a little bit of a discount because it's going to help us to that goal of a well taken care of patient. So as long as the message is consistent, and as long as we have a message, right? As the leaders and the entrepreneurs, we are the one who sets the vision, and we are the ones who actually have to implement that around the team so that the team stays focused on it.
Yeah. So somewhere along this path of you jumping in, self-teaching, getting resources, leading your team led you to, I believe I saw you were a Maxwell certified team
Mm-hmm.
member, right? And so it led you to Maxwell's teachings. And eventually you've started this Lead OD. Remind us how long that you've been doing, or
So
when you founded Lead OD.
I started that officially back in 2021. So it's been a couple of years now.
Okay.
Um, and it started, we talked a little bit earlier about side businesses versus parallel businesses. So it did start off as a side business because during COVID, when everyone was getting furloughed, and in the state of Florida, we could be open for X amount of hours, but we could only see emergency patients. So my goal during that was to figure out how I could save my team, because I didn't want to let anyone go because it was hard for everyone. Because the result of, if I could save my team, to me, what that meant was the business was going to do okay. So through that, I started realizing that we have to, in order for me to save my team, I just have to make them be better, right? I have to teach them these soft skills about communication and about listening and about what it means to be a good person. Because I realize, if I can create a culture where people are becoming better people, then naturally they become a better employee and a better team member. So that's where I kind of fell into the John Maxwell side of things, because he's really about growing people and about leadership, and how, as the leader, you're really serving your team while you're leading them. So that's really when I got into the culture piece and team building.
Yeah, I mean, talked with, again, other folks and even some colleagues who have fairly large teams too. They've gotten to the point where they've, pretty much taken themselves out of all the operations of their business. And one of the things that always stuck with me is like a common thread there is like their job, how they view their job at that level. And I think we all do this as business owners, even if we're still into some of the operations. But as a leader, their job is just going to work and making sure that their people are happy, love to work there, and have the ability to take care of their clients or patients well, right? And so, but it's like it's just a complete different focus than you know some. I'm sure we've all had experiences of for lack of brevity, just bad bosses, right? Or just bosses who didn't show that level of either caring or compassion or empathy or anything like that to any personal situations. And it just felt like you were going in there and you just going to work, right? As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to building this culture of, hey, like you're going to spend the majority of your day, of your work week with these people here. And so why not make it, a really inviting and caring atmosphere. in a place we want to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up a good point because I think there's an important distinction between leaders and managers, right?
Mm.
So managers, what a leader is, and you said it, they're responsible for kind of the vision. Where are we going? Right. So their leaders are actually more responsible for the people and how they are and how they perceive their job and approach the job. Managers actually are in charge of the process.
Mm.
Managers make sure the people can carry out the process. So essentially, a manager's job becomes easy. They just have to look at the process. Why didn't the process happen? Troubleshoot the process, and then get the person to carry out the process. Now, it's the leader's job to motivate the people to sit in those seats so that they can carry out the process. So it actually makes, because a lot of times we think a leader is a manager and a manager is a leader, but they're actually very distinct roles. They're a very distinct mindset that you have to have. So and it's very rare to have a leader and a manager in the same person. So, as a leader and an entrepreneur, casting the vision, which we touched on before, and then our managers on the day to day operations are the ones just to make sure the processes get carried out. Now, also, you have to have good systems and processes in place, but that's a whole nother conversation. But that's the distinction in terms of going from operations to the day to day.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great insight because and I like what you said that it's very difficult to have that leader and manager and find those qualities in the same person, right? Because like, I think a lot of us, if we do have managers and, if we are the leader or however if both are present, but that business owner probably went through, and you may have as well, went through some iteration where you did have to be both for at least a short period of time. And it can be a bit, I don't want to say draining, but there's a certain level of, it gets exhausting if you're going to do that for an extended period of time, just because you can feel like, you can tell I'm kind of speaking from personal experience. You can feel like the shift
No, it's
of,
draining. Draining is the right word.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the shift of mental, just focus and attention and how you're thinking about things, and and really setting aside time to wear that manager hat versus the leadership hat, right? I mean, it's
Hmm.
just it's kind of grueling.
Yeah, it's good to create a buffer. You need a space, even if you're functioning as the leader and the manager, you need to have a space where you can switch hats comfortably because if you're worried about where are we going to be in this quarter or next year or 3 years, but then you're also like, well, I need to get the day to day going. You're right. It's hard to separate your brain from that, and because you need different areas of your brain to think. You need the creative side and the analytical side. So there has to be some space. If you happen to be the same person, the leader and the manager, you got to figure out an outlet to where you're able to switch so that your creativity brain can turn on when it needs to be, and then when your analytical brain can turn on when it needs to be.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. Well, look, I know we're coming up close to time. This has been a great conversation so far, and I really appreciate it. But I want to be mindful of your time. I ask everybody towards the end a simple question, and this could be something we've already touched on, and maybe you want to elaborate on it, or it could be something completely new that you think of. But just if you had, one piece or maybe your best piece of advice you'd give to others on their journey in independent optometry, what would you say that is?
I would just say make sure you know what you're trying to accomplish. Make sure your independent optometric practice, whatever that looks like, make sure that that's not the goal. Make sure it serves the bigger goals of your life, whether you want more time, whether you want to travel more, whether you want, you drive by your dream house every day just to keep that as a reminder. Make sure that however you build your business is helping you build the life you want to create, because eventually you'll build the business you want, but if that's the end goal, then it's going to be unfulfilling ultimately. So just make sure everything is tied into the bigger vision of your life.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate all your time and your knowledge that you shared with us today. And hopefully our paths will cross again sometime soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Eric.